Okay. And good morning to everyone here in Australia, New Zealand. Good afternoon to those in Eastern USA, Canada, and I guess good afternoon as well to those on the Western side. I am Michael Haynes, Business Growth Specialist, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Through in B2B, which is my live stream show dedicated to sharing advice, insights, ideas, inspiration for those of us as small and medium leaders in the B2B space. And so today, it's been a while since I've done an episode, but today I'm very excited to welcome friend and colleague David Solomon from Montreal, where we're going to have a discussion about why it's important to be considering international expansion as a means of growing your SME B2B business, irrespective of whether you're a product or a service, which is often my key focus. David is a market expansion specialist, focusing on the manufacturing retail side of things, massive amounts of experience, insights for us. So really looking forward to the conversation. David, how are you, my friend?
I'm
Great to have you.
doing great. As we just said, it's snowing here, so
Yeah,
we know
not
it's almost the
missing
new
that
year.
too much,
Almost
my
the new
friend. I
year.
gotta say, I'm not missing that. I'm
No,
happy
no,
to
no.
wait a few months' time before I take our national carrier back across the pond. So, David, why don't you introduce yourself a bit more fully to folks who are either watching live or watching via YouTube on the recordings, live on LinkedIn or YouTube. Introduce yourself to our viewers, listeners.
Thank you so much, Michael. And hello, everybody. My name is David Solomon. I am a fractional chief revenue officer. And as Michael said, new market expansion expert. I have been a sales guy for 35 plus years and proud to say it. I know people think sales is a dirty word, but it is not. It is. I'm very proud to do and tell stories about what I've done in the past, having done work in manufacturing, in the toy industry, going global in over 40 different countries, working in the newspaper industry, technology, and other types of industries, helping them grow into new markets at all times. And just for fun, because life cannot be boring, I'm also a lecturer at McGill University, which I invited my good friend Michael to lecture to my students yesterday. I teach about strategic revenue growth, how to be a chief revenue officer. I'm teaching this to not only MBA students, but also Masters of Retail Management students. So having a lot of fun, sharing experiences, and trying to impart with the next generation how to think strategic growth for their companies wherever they may go.
Fantastic, David. You're doing some amazing things. And so, yeah, really looking forward to our conversation today because I really want all our listeners, viewers to walk away with some actionable insights to help them, take some actions about considering about international expansion. So to kind of kick things off, David, I'd love to know what's kind of one insight trend that you're observing with respect to, your zone of genius. Your world is very much a manufacturing side, but what's kind of a key insider trend that you're seeing happening right now with regards to new market entry?
I think what's interesting and exciting is whether you love or hate the man in the White House, he's rattled 190 countries to rethink where they should go for new market expansion because everybody loves the big USA, right? Let's go to America, let's do all this thing. But they realized, it's not what it's cut out to be. It's big and it's hard. And maybe we should think of other markets. And I'll tell you, from a North American perspective, we're terrible understanding what goes on in Africa, South America, Australia, Middle East. Like we're bad at it because we're really misinformed in this part of the world. So what I'm seeing now is manufacturers open to the idea of going to these markets, exploring these markets, because other ones have suddenly, you think they're closed. They're really not, but they think they're closed, but they're open, Michael. That's the new thing. They're open to looking and exploring other options.
David, I agree with you 100%. From the services side of things, so I work a lot with professional services, accounting, law firms, technology companies. You're absolutely right. There is a lot of potential in terms of international opportunities. The U.S. is often looked at the market that everyone wants to go to, and it can potentially make sense for the U.S. to be a market, but it is not the only one. There's lots happening, for those on the professional services side, there's lots happening where a lot of companies are trying to come up with new and innovative business models. They're trying to do new things because their clients are also requiring new services, new solutions. And that's happening globally. So there's a lot of activity happening globally. So you're absolutely right. And there are a lot of markets which many folks haven't considered from a services/technology point of view, the likes of Indonesia, Vietnam, APAC, there's lots of things going on. In the Middle East, United Arab Emirates, and that whole Gulf region, there are lots of opportunities where there are companies that are looking to scale, they're looking to grow. They have the funds to invest in, professional service products, services, solutions. Many of these regions also have investment funding through their government. So there is a lot of opportunities other than the land of opportunity, the U.S., that folks should definitely be considering. Just to kind of circle back, what are circling back again, David, what are some of from a manufacturing/retail perspective, what are some of the other markets that, let's say, from a North American perspective, some of the regions that perhaps folks should be giving some consideration to?
Michael, your list is not different. It depends on which direction you're going. Like I want to be very clear because people talk, oh, can I import with you? And like, no, that's not my strength. So please don't ask me alternative manufacturing from China. I know a lot of people could teach you and guide you in that area. But when you're talking about export, Michael, there are 190 markets out there.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that they're all, depending on what you do, they all have a different, variety of different, opportunities. But I'll tell you, to me, where people get scared, for example, is when they go to markets where they don't speak the language. So, they'll avoid Germany and they'll avoid France because they're English speaking and they're, oh my God, I don't think I can do business there. In Italy, of course you can. Of course you can. You should be looking into that. Same thing with South and Latin America. Yeah, they're Spanish. So what? Out of the 190 markets out there, 60 will tell you they do business in English. And so even in Africa, even the Middle East, like you talked about Dubai, for example, like there's this crazy demand for products, especially American, Canadian-made products. What the heck? Now, when I say Canadian-made products, I'm not just talking about maple syrup, people. I'm talking about other products that we make around here that people really, really, really want. And we're kind of like saying, oh no, like, please, like, we could help. There's so many markets out there that want these goods, manufactured goods, because they can't get it. And they're looking to us looking for alternative sources.
Okay. And why, from your perspective, why do you think there is this hesitation, lack of consideration with respect to potentially, going internationally to other less obvious markets than the North American market? What do you think is some of the drivers, behaviors, thoughts behind that? Why there is that? Yeah, it's just lack of consideration. Because even here, living in Australia and APAC, it's often what I'm getting asked about is going to the US, going to US and Canada. Why is there that overlook? Language is one thing. Are there other factors? What else do you think is driving that limited view?
Michael, from a US Canadian perspective, I'll put it to you really simply. When you travel and you go to watch CNN International versus CNN in US and Canada, it's not the same thing. The exposure on CNN International to Africa, to South America, to Australia, to the Middle East, to Asia is extraordinary, but not on the US Canadian side. On the US Canadian side, we talk about some markets. We might talk about England and France. We might talk about Japan when there's an earthquake or there's a changing prime minister. We'll get excited about the royal family in England. But when it comes up to the rest of the world, I'm sorry, we're ignorant. We don't have that exposure, not from our mass media, not in the universities, not in a lot of other places. You really got to dig to find it. But when you travel, it's all over the place, and they're happy to talk about that. So I think we in US and Canada have to be careful because Mexico is part of North America, and it's not quite like that.
Yeah.
We are staying ignorant and limited, and we need to get out of our comfort zone to go look for those better markets, or those different markets, I should say.
I think because I think I think you've really nailed it on the head. There's a tendency for us to rely in the familiar, what we know within our comfort zone. And I think that is quite applicable on the B2B services side of things as well. And I think given the, market saturation, the volatility, the uncertainty, the increased competition, we need to really start broadening our horizons and be really looking into what is potentially out there. And I think irrespective of whether you're on the manufacturing products side of things or on the services side, I think the thing that SMBs need to start doing is start to doing some serious investigation as to what are some other market opportunities in terms of both geographic regions and from my side, of the services side, also looking at industry verticals. I think they need to start really doing some in-depth research and start looking into some of these opportunities as to where there could be some other potential attractive opportunities where there are lucrative markets that have strong growth potential, willingness and capability to spend. And I think that's part of the problem. And there are a number of resources that can be used through your government agencies, the likes of Export Development Corporation, EDC, so forth. There's different sources that they can use potentially. Any insights, suggestions with respect to starting to get to understand your markets? What are some of the views? What's your view in terms of what are some of the ways from your side of the world in terms of manufacturing, et cetera, folks can start to, those who may not travel and who may not, be so exposed, how can they go about understanding what are some of the opportunities that might be elsewhere in the global marketplace?
Michael, we have this thing called AI. It's awesome. I would seriously, if you are in a particular industry, size, or whatever, ask AI the following question. Describe your company, your size, what you do, your uniqueness, or who your ideal customer is, and then ask it to list 10 potential markets that would want your product, or in your case, services. And you know what? Phenomenal what the answer is going to be. At that point, if I'm on the Canadian, or even if I'm on the Canadian or the US side, it doesn't make a difference. Anywhere you are in the world, practically, there's probably an office in that country, in that foreign country, from your country, that's willing to help you go. I know in Canada, we have offices from France and the UK, Spain, all kinds of offices across Canada. There are embassies. Obviously, there are embassies from all over the world here. I mean, get on the phone, call them and saying, according to AI, the market that you're in right now is pretty ripe. What should I know? Get started with information. Research, baby. Research.
Yeah, and I'm going to expand on that. I think that's a great way. So start with AI with the question, what are those potential markets? Then tapping into what are the industry associations, and using AI to ask what are the key industry professional associations, both locally where you're currently living. So if you're in Australia currently, Singapore, Canada, what are the industry and professional associations within where you live, and which ones have potentially international chapters as well? Because I really find, and I tell all my clients, and when I'm working with students as well, your industry and professional association, that is the repository of all great information, the white papers, the webinars, the recordings, where you can get a lot of that research, often for free, or if you have to join the association for a nominal price, where you can get some of that information, you can get access to who is the relevant governing body organization in a market that you want to look into. So leveraging AI, asking the questions as to, where are some of the market opportunities? What are some of the industry and professional associations, both locally and abroad? That's a great starting point, because I think where they can start looking to tap in to get some information. Awesome. Relevant and a bit of a tangent, and I think it came up perhaps yesterday in the lecture. We're talking about the role of in-person visits, those kinds of things. What's your view on that, David? Is that important? Does it fit? Where does it fit? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, Michael, I'm old school, hence the graying white hair, if you will, over here. And I still believe. And listen, the majority of the world still likes to do business face to face, over a
Yeah,
drink, over a meal. U.S. and Canada, we tend to be a little less warm and fuzzy in that sense. But
yeah,
go to places like Mexico, Japan, other markets like that, um, Africa, whatever. They don't want to do business with people they don't like.
yeah,
So Zoom is lovely.
right.
Whatever. This is great. Super. You haven't forged a relationship with them. You're just no different. They're looking for partners. They're looking for those kind of connections. So, you know, whether it's to close a business or to network, and I'm still a believer that networking is also a contact sport. Get in there. If you're going to be serious about a country, and you're the CEO, the founder of that business,
Yeah.
don't send your salesperson there. You need to get on the plane. You need to go meet the right people, and you need to establish those relationships. Even if you decide to go with a distributor in market, it's your company, your reputation, your product or service. It doesn't matter. And in the case of, I'm assuming from a services point of view, same story. Still your name on the wall. For God's sakes, go meet the people, connect with the people, watch your business explode. I'm a firm believer. Get on a plane.
Yes, I'm a believer in that as well too. I would say though, doing that requisite research first and getting in detail to really understand the geographic market,
Sure.
the industry, I think is quite important. And you need to spend some time to do so. But I fully believe with you to do so. And again, I would say, and I'd like to have your view on this. I have found from working with some other clients often that um, doing that requisite market industry research, understanding who are some of the leading industry bodies, be it associations, research groups, those often can be an initial good gateway for you to learn more about the market, start having some discussions and dialogue with them, because they can be, again, a pathway to be able for you to understand where and with whom you should be getting the meetings with. And I actually work with an IT risk management firm in Western Australia, and that was our strategy. We did a fair bit around research around understanding the industries. They actually had some clients in the market that they were looking to go into. So we did some client interviews as well. So doing your
Mhm.
industry market research, doing some client interviews, and if you've got those relationships, they can also be a means of introduction. But doing some of those, and then doing some of that requisite research, and then identifying who are some of the leading bodies and using that as an avenue to do some initial engagements. That's how we did a market entry strategy. From a manufacturing point of view, in terms of, because saying for people to get on a plane to go where, to meet, and how, with whom. So the
But
industry
Michael,
leading bodies,
Michael,
as
let
well
me
on the service side, is that something that can be done similarly from a manufacturing side in terms of practical steps, in terms of, you know, looking to start having those discussions, those engagements, be it online or eventually, and I fully believe having those in-person meetings. On the manufacturing retail side, what is a pathway to being able to set yourself up for those in-person visits? Is it similar, same kind of idea of those relevant associations, etc., or there's other avenues that should be considered and utilized?
No, actually, everything you said is apropos with respect to even the manufacturing side. I would certainly believe that, look, whether it's an industry associations are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful sources, but also networking groups. If you're associated with an international networking group or whatever, they too are a great source of
Yeah,
contacts in market that you would want to go to. So I would leverage that. So if you're in BNI, corporate connections, YPO, EO, a lot of these other
yeah,
international bodies, someone in another market is there for you. And it's part of that game. Don't rely on LinkedIn, please. Like this is big deal. So
yeah,
yeah, I would leverage that, but I'd also leverage the governments. And I go back to what I said
yeah,
before about the trade commissioners and the government offices is like they have
yeah,
trade missions, They have
Yeah.
people that they will bring in. Many of those bodies, Michael, will even help you set up appointments to meet in-market people that are really
Yes.
key to decide
Absolutely.
whether you should go there. And the last thing I would keep in mind are trade shows, because there's nothing more powerful than walking a trade show and talking to people in market and getting research. And by the way, those after trade show networking events, back to those cocktails, back to those things. It's amazing who you will walk in, you'll connect with and find opportunities with. So as you can see, none of what I just said is as impactful online as it is in person. Now, let's be straight. In today's day and age, you do the homework first. Make the contact, have a first Zoom call or whatever it is, get that information, get to know the person, and if it makes sense, then go.
Yes. So a couple of things that I fully agree. You've got to make the investment, and you got to make the investment time to really and I'm sound like a broken record, but really do that research to understand the market, understand the industry. Doing all that in depth to really understand the size of it, what are the opportunities, who are the leading folk. You're spot on with your government, trade associations, as well as your industry association, but doing that in-depth research and leveraging your contacts. With respect to trade shows, I fully agree. I have found working with clients that doing some research and planning before the event and understanding who is going to be attending and looking to set up meetings with some of those key people who are some of the key strategic partners, sponsors, speakers, and setting up the meetings before you even go to the event, so that you're going to the event to really be meeting some key stakeholders. Because I take the point of view that a lot of your decision makers in many cases, and in the services side, we're talking managing partners, CEOs and stuff, they don't walk trade show floors per se, but they're often attending the roundtables, the panels, some of the other events around where they can meet their peers, doing your requisite research prior and setting up the meetings before. And I'm not talking as this just being an academic exercise. This is what I did with a client. We went through the association, we set up the meetings beforehand, because when you plan and you're traveling from halfway across the world, or even a 3 or 4 hour flight, people will make time, because to your point, the magic happens in person. When you're showing up in person, to say you're coming from Australia to New York or Ottawa, for which I have done very short periods of time, people will make time to make the meeting. So doing that research, that planning, doing that outreach, setting those meetings up before, and then having a plan after can make those trade show events, very impactful as a way to really get started and making the magic happen. But yeah, being in person, you do have to be what I call living in the market. You got to be in it to win it, because that is what will break through and will have you stand out and really can make momentum happen. And people do take you more seriously. That's the bottom line. But it's doing that requisite work up front. That's all really great. David, what's your perspective then? So we've talked about doing your research and leveraging the different sources, networking groups, etc., setting up, going to these events to try to get meetings with some of these key strategic people. What happens after that? So you've gone to a trade show, whether we're talking on the services side, manufacturing side, you've met that senior decision maker. What's kind of the next step? Are we looking at potentially some sort of pilot part? What are some of the things should we be thinking about doing, whether during those initial conversations and after post that engagement, that in-person trip?
Well, first thing I got to understand is, number one, I got to make a decision. Is this the right market for me? And what I'm missing in this whole conversation is the competitive landscape. If I don't know what my competitors are up to, how they're positioned in the market, how they're priced in the market, how they communicate in the market, it's a little harder for me to make the decision, because I can meet 10 people say, yes, I love you, I love you, I love you. I'm still not leaving with a purchase order. So I really need to make sure that though they tell me one thing, I can validate it, that yes, there's a market opportunity, there is an option. Maybe there are too many competitors. Okay, why? Why do they want to speak to me?
And that's where that whole industry market analysis that you're doing
100%,
up front
100%.
will give you that landscape. because some may not even be a consideration to begin with. Yeah.
But so should you decide now that this is the right market, now you got to ask yourself the following question. What's the market entry process? Am I going to use a distributor? And from a manufacturing point of view, am I going to use a distributor? Do I hire a salesperson? Should I create a joint venture or an acquisition even? And I know people are saying to me, David, you think as a first new market entry, you do an acquisition? Not necessarily, but you should have it on the table because you don't know what comes in market. You don't know what's there. But to me, when people say, only thing I could do is a distributor, my reaction is no, it's not only a distributor. A distributor has advantages and has disadvantages. Every mode of entry has advantages and disadvantages. Yep. What's best for your company? We need to look at the market and your product and decide what's the best mode. Not everywhere I went, by the way, Michael, when I was in the toy industry, did we have a distributor. You know, we had salespeople in multiple markets because it made more sense. Okay. And so to me, it's really about once you have all that information, it's like taking it, assessing it, and saying, okay, if this is my market, great. How should I go in and create the different scenarios that should we do this? Should we do this? Should we do this? What those then you will know, okay, it's right. And this is what we got to do. And also the timing. Does the timing go? Now, there's one thing I forgot. I needed to add to that, and we kind of left out sort of are the external factors. The external factors you need to know. You may or may not get those in the trade shows, but if you don't know there's this acronym called PASTEL, which is the politics, the economics, the social, the technological, the environmental, and the legal. You got to get that stuff done. Because the last thing you want to do is go to Europe and not know about GDPR. So really before you go in, get a lot of that information, decide how you want to get in, and then go in.
Yeah. So again, we're coming back to doing your industry market analysis, which is quite in-depth. That's quite extensive because we are looking at doing that PESTEL analysis. We are looking at understanding our competitors, the market size, the growth, economic condition, doing that extensive work, which takes a fair bit of time to do. It does take a bit of investment. That does need to be upfront because you are able to make a pretty good assessment from that analysis. You might have 5 markets that AI might have said initially, these are markets for consideration. But once you start to do that in-depth around looking at the industry, doing your PESTEL analysis on politics, economics, competitors, size, growth, etc., barriers to entry, that might whittle it down to a couple. So it's coming back to really, again, doing that in-depth analysis through leveraging your various sources. In terms of your market entry, yes, you've also raised this second question that once you've done the analysis and determined that these are some potential markets that are attractive, considering what is the potential entry strategy that you're going to be using. And from a services side of things, strategic partnerships, collaborations often can be a good form of entry where you're collaborating with the likes of an industry body as a point of contact. I think one of the key drivers to help you define what your market entry strategy, channel strategy is going to be is as part of your analysis and doing your research, you need to understand who your buyers, decision makers are and how do they buy. That is very important that you need to understand within the markets because all markets are not the same. Even if we're talking technology, some of the drivers and what folks do in Europe, Middle East is slightly different from Asia, slightly different from America. So you need to understand how buyers are buying and where and with whom they interact because that might help define what your market entry, your channel strategy will be. Will it be direct? Will it be partners, what have you? Any further insights to add regarding that from a manufacturing perspective?
Well, I think the same thing I would say to a financial services or anyone whatever is legal people, taxation, a lot of these details. I know it sounds disgusting and I can't go into the details, but I'll tell you, I know a lot of people who decided, yeah, we're going to go into said market and then made mistakes. I'm not saying it's about setting up a company and all that, but does the distributor agreement that you have, is it intact? Is it can you exercise it in any market that you're going into, that market that you're going into? When it comes up to the accounting part, are you charging the right taxes, collecting it, remitting it, doing all those kinds of things? Do you need insurance in that market and whatever? These are things that, these are pains in the posterior type of stuff that you need to know. Don't just rely on the person in your market to help you there. You might want to consider someone in market. And again, go through the networking, go through the people that you know, let them guide you and help you to say what's the right way to do it. And that's it. I mean, and then you said, pilot project. You could go pilot, but I'm a firm believer of go all in, people. Go and talk to, because if once you're in, don't dip your toe, because the buyer will know that you're not serious about the market, and I'll say no. You need to give the buyer the sense that you're serious. You want to go into that market, and you might call it yourself a pilot project, but don't let them know that it's pilot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree. I do think from a services side, yeah, there is a way to do a pilot and initial kind of phase one, and you can structure that accordingly. Yeah, so you do have to demonstrate that commitment. You have to be serious. There have to be that commitment. You do have to go all in, but you can do so with an initial engagement. From a services side, you can go in with an initial engagement, which can deliver lots of value. I think what you just spoke about, David, really talks to that. And in addition to doing a lot of the assessment around the market, the competitors, the opportunities, part of your research also needs to involve seeking out some of your subject matter experts around tax, legal. You need to get some of those subject matter experts around some of those issues that might pertain to supply chain, etc., to give you the requisite advice so that you understand how things are going to be working within those markets that you're looking to serve. So getting that professional advice within some of those domains, accounting, tax, legal, etc., is something that you may need to do as part of the research, as part of the assessment, to see whether this is a market that is viable, attractive, and whether that is now or perhaps you may need to delay because of requirements. Awesome. So look, this has been a great conversation, David. Any final kind of comments in terms of any key watch-outs, first of all? So any key watch-outs that folks should be thinking about when they're looking to consider 2026, and if they're thinking about expanding internationally?
Well, one thing I tell manufacturers is, especially SMB manufacturers, you need to have something unique. And if you don't have it, you better come up with a way to do it. And it doesn't have to be the physical product. It could be the way you deliver, the way you're servicing it, something like that. Because if you're playing the commodity game, if you're playing the price game, it's a race to the bottom. And as an SMB, you never win. Bigger players will crush you. So my before you do any of this process, sit with your team and ask them what pain point that you're solving for your clients and how are you doing it. And then go get it validated with your clients and see that they're telling you the same thing. And you talked, I let the ideal customer, you talked about that, and I don't want to go back to that again, but you need to validate that those are your ideal customers, because you're not ready to deliver and to go internationally. And this is step one, by the way, before you validate that you have something unique to offer and that there's a market who understands and appreciates that and wants that. That's key. The second part is internal alignment, Michael, and that if you have 11 different departments within your organization, and if your 11 departments aren't aligned, you don't have the right people around the table, they don't understand the vision of where you want to take the company as a founder, CEO, owner, I'm not sure, whatever your title is, you have the wrong people at the table. And you got to make sure that you have those folks who can understand that you want to scale, that why and how you're going to get there, and that they're going to not be silo thinking, but broad thinking. Because you want a CFO or a financial person who will go, Michael, we can get government grants for that. I'm going to go find those kinds of opportunities, and because we know we need that kind of money. And I want the head of operations to go, we should improve our processes so we can be better at this and da 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 da. Because everyone thinking scaling makes a massive difference. So before you go out and thinking of exports, please take those 2 steps first before you jump into any new market opportunities.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I think that is all applicable from a service perspective. I think we're talking from the same hymn book, that you have to do your requisite. There's that 3 levels of what I call that listening. You need to have internally, what are your goals? What are your strengths and capabilities? How and where you're going to win. And part of that validation and that clarity of how to move forward is going to be coming through doing that in-depth industry market analysis, understanding your competitors, talking to some of your current clients and understanding, where, their perceptions, what are their requirements, what are they needing, and getting a clear understanding of all of those things. So both internally and externally, and then making sure you have that internal alignment to then start moving forward. Fantastic. David, this has been a great conversation. I think all our listeners, live or on recording, will find this very useful. How can, for those folks in the world of manufacturing retail looking to go internationally, how can they get a hold of you and connect with you?
Folks, listen, I'm an easy guy to find. LinkedIn, it's David I. Solomon 13. I'm there, but look for David Solomon. The company there, you see at the bottom there, Zero Growth. You could send me a lovely little email at info@zerogrowth.com and or www.zerogrowth.com. That is the best way to reach me. Carrier pigeon, telex, telegraph, unfortunately don't work anymore, but if you can figure it out, yeah, I'm reachable any way you can.
I think some of our viewers may not even know what you're talking about. David.
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you so much, viewers and listeners. I hope you've enjoyed. So please do reach out to David for any questions from a manufacturing retail perspective. For those on the services side of things, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also reach out on my website, listeninnovategrow.com. I'm Michael Haynes. Thank you again for tuning in. Bye for now, and we'll see you next time.